In this talk, we're going to be taking a look at Medicare as a primary, Medicare as a secondary, and other Medicare topics. Like any other insurance, we can have Medicare as a primary or a secondary payer. Medicare is the primary payer when the employee is eligible for an employer group health plan, but has declined it. If the individual is currently employed but is not eligible for the group coverage, or they've exhausted their group coverage limits, they're also a primary. And then, of course, if the patient's also covered by TRICARE, if they're also covered on an individual plan that they purchase themselves, they're under 65, and they have Medicare, or if they have ESRD and are eligible for Medicare for more than 30 months. Again, all these are examples of when Medicare is going to be the primary. There'll be times when Medicare is the conditional primary. So with the conditional primary status, the plan is considered primary and Medicare issues the denial of payment and it's under appeal. A patient with a physical or intellectual disability that fails to file a claim with a primary payer, Medicare would also be the conditional primary. And then finally, we have workman's comp claims, and the claim has been denied, then the primary payer status will change to Medicare. Medicare can be a secondary, and like other secondary, there's certain situations where this applies. One would be when the employee group health plan has more than 20 employees. If there's disability through the group health plan that has more than 100 covered employees, ESRD, third-party liability, or workman's comp. All these are examples when Medicare is the secondary payer. And again, little table that you might want to review in your book. So if somebody has retiree group health plan coverage, Medicare would pay first. Patient is 65 or older, has group health plan based on a spouse's job, and the job has 20 or more employees, the group health plan would pay first, Medicare is the secondary. However, if it's less than 20 employees, same situation, but the spouse's employer has less than 20 employees, Medicare would pay first. And again, we see these summary notices. If you've ever had an elderly parent live with you or what have you, you've certainly seen these, right? They list the claims information. They give you the, essentially, instead of an explanation of benefits, EOBs, these are explanation of Medicare benefits. They also give you benefit notices under Part A, benefit denial letters. And again, here's the summary notice for Part B. Again, some people talk about Medicare as the money is coming right from CMS itself, right from the feds, like the IRS. We usually have administrative contractors, the MACs, and these are companies that you've heard of like Palmetto, Noridian, so on. And basically they act as the middlemen, right? And with Medicare split or shared visit payment, this happens when a physician and qualified non-physician provider each perform things that are medically necessary for the same patient. So it's kind of parsed out. And then the DMEs, of course, go directly to the 4 regional MACs. Something that's in the news a lot is telehealth. The claims for Medicare, of course, are 12 months, not anything big and mysterious about that. The claim forms that are used, we've talked about with the 1500 form and the UB04. One thing we didn't get into was the whole issue of telehealth. Last bullet point. And of course, we have the HCPCS modifier GT with the code to indicate that it was telehealth. And again, something else to look at is the modifier 95. This is added to codes for any services that include telehealth, and also requires the modifier GT to be assigned. Something we do see a lot of are Medicare, Medicaid, the Medi crossovers, right? So in other words, we have somebody who doesn't just have Medicare, but they're also eligible for Medicaid. And typically, of course, these are people that are both over 65 and have low incomes, and the notifications are sent to these beneficiaries, in other words, the patients, of course. And on the 1500 form, you would have to make sure that both Medicare and Medicaid boxes are marked off in block 1. And the abbreviation MCD, which would be followed by the patient's Medicaid ID. And again, in contrast to Medicare, each state has its own individual Medicaid plan or plans. So very important to get the specific instructions on all of these. And that's all I have for you. We'll see you next time. Bye now.